The People's Business is made possible by our partners, Solar Dynamics, the most efficient energy systems.
Good evening and welcome to the People's Business. I'm Wendy Burke. Tonight, we're going to be looking at the 2024 hurricane season, risk and resilience. Yes, we're going to be talking to the people from the Barbados Meteorological Services, as well as the members of the General Insurance Association of Barbados, because if a hurricane should hit, and heaven forbid something happens to our homes, we want to ensure that we can either repair or rebuild. So with me tonight, I have Mr. Randy Green, who's the president of GIAB, Mr. David Alleyne, a member of the General Insurance Association of Barbados, and Mr. Brian Murray, who is the deputy director at Barbados Met Services. Welcome to you all, gentlemen. Welcome to you, our viewers, for staying with us this evening here on CBC TV 8. We will be back after the break. And welcome back to the People's Business Live. We're looking at risk and resilience this 2024 hurricane season. Now, Brian, you, Mr. Murray, are the man that we want tonight, because what is in store for 2024? June 1st has passed. The season is now upon us. What can we expect in terms of the climatic conditions, the heat, the rain? How active is it going to be?
First of all, I want to say good night, Wendy. Good night to Randy. Good night to David. And good night to the viewers. So, the question that is going to be asked this year is, how many hurricanes are going to form? Well, according to the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, they are predicting 17 to 25 named storms. And out of those named storms, they expect 8 to 13 hurricanes, and out of those 8 to 13 hurricanes, 4 to 7 are expected to be major. And there are two reasons for this. Number one, the Atlantic sea surface temperatures are warmer than normal. As a matter of fact, one of our USVs is measuring temperatures of around 29 degrees Celsius. So the waters are warm right across from Barbados through the Central Atlantic. And at the same time, the El Nino phenomenon is dissipating, and you now have a La Nina. And whenever you have La Nina, you have increased frequency of tropical storms and hurricanes.
Yes, that is true. That's a phenomenon that we really don't like to see as much. Now, let's go to the insurers in terms of what we're looking at. 70 to 25 named, 8 to 13 likely to turn to hurricanes. Barbados, for a while, would have been spared major issues, but we had a freak storm which created a multitude of issues for us, Mr. Graham. In terms of GIAB and what it's looking at, what are you predicting in terms of the number of people who may come knocking at the doors of our insurers in terms of property damage or loss?
Thanks, Wendy, and good night to the viewers. First of all, I think we have to say Well done to Barbadians for taking the season seriously. We have a situation, as Brian has said, where we are seeing frequency of hurricanes and the strength of those hurricanes increasing, and we have to take it seriously. When it comes to hurricanes, and we're talking to what the Barbadians will need, we are actually talking about the fact that if your house is damaged, your roof is off, your windows down, your property is damaged, you need funding to replace that. And what people have to find is ways to fund that replacement or that rebuild. So you can go to your savings, you can go and borrow funds, or you can go to insurance. Many more people are looking to insurance to solve this, and that is a good thing. And we hope that Barbadians continue this trend and prepare for the financial impacts that they will need to repair their house. It's a very serious and demanding issue, and we have to solve that before the hurricane occurs.
Okay.
We expect to see
Yeah.
more persons seeking insurance.
Okay, that's, I'm glad you said that we're expecting more to start seeking it because, say, Mr. Alleyne, I am a new home owner. I've barely managed to scrape together this house out of an inheritance that was left for me. And you're trying to convince me that I need to insure this timber and wall structure. What is one of the most important reasons, behind me trying to keep that property and ensure that its value can be returned to me should something happen?
Good evening, Wendy and viewers. When you mentioned scraping together some funds, Randy mentioned going to get some funds in case you needed to replace. I think that if you had an asset, which is probably the most important thing that you've invested in, most people have a house and a vehicle. Those are the two most important assets they have. I could not afford to lose my home in the event of an hurricane or a fire or anything else that could occur. And I think that that is what should be in the forefront of most people, that they secure the asset that they've spent their savings or their life in accumulating.
Okay. Now, I want to find out now in terms of underinsurance, because there are people who sometimes say they've not gotten back all they thought they would have from the insurer. So, what are we talking about when we talk about underinsurance, and why should people look to buy insurance at the replacement or rebuilding cost of that property?
Well, if I like to think of insurance as a risk transfer mechanism. You have an asset, you're transferring the risk of damage to that asset to the insurance company.
Okay, you wanted to weigh in,
What
Mr. Graham?
Say that again, Randy?
No, Mr. Graham wanted to weigh in.
Oh yeah, sure, Wendy. I mean, well, let me give an example. If you built your house 10 years ago for $200,000 and you insured it for that value, to rebuild your house today, it may cost 400,000. So what happens is you end up with persons making a claim, and they get a check for 200,000, which is what you insured it for, but you need 400 to repair it. So you end up being underinsured. There's a shortfall of funds that you need to repair your house, and that's the issue that we are trying to bring to people of Barbados. You need to insure your house for what it costs to rebuild today, not what it costs for you to when you first built it.
So, in terms of finding out what that cost is likely to be, now that we're hearing how active the season is likely to be, should I have somebody come out and reassess the value of my property?
Yeah, I think if you are in a position to do that, that is obviously the best thing to do. Get the professionals to do a valuation. However, if you are not in a position to do that, there are ways that you can estimate it. So you take the square footage of your house, you multiply that by what the contractors are rebuilding at today. That may be, say, $300 a square foot. So if your house is 1,000 square feet times $300, it means to rebuild your house today, it will cost you $300,000. So if you can't get an official valuation, you can do an estimation to get a ballpark figure of what it will cost to repair.
Okay, now I have the home insured, but does it go without saying that was the contents inside that property are also insured, or I have to do them as two separate and distinct things?
David, you want to start?
But most policies will cover homeowners. Homeowners policy will cover the house as well as contents. You have to make sure when you're talking to the insurance company that you want let them know that you want to cover both your contents and the house.
Okay, now what experiences in terms of the sector um, have you seen in other countries that hurricanes have hit in terms of you, the insurers, looking to also secure yourself in terms of, say, reinsurance and, understanding the changes within the marketplace?
Yeah, sure. Wendy, it's if you're being honest, it is a very heartbreaking and devastating situation after a hurricane. Houses have no roof. Many of them, it's mass, right? Mass. You talk about neighborhoods with no roofs, no windows. You cannot protect your families. We have seen this in Dominica. We've seen it in Grenada. We've seen it in Abaco. It is not a situation where we in Barbados can fathom at this point, right? It's a situation where your house, if it is not damaged, may be the only house in the neighborhood, and everybody is coming to your house for safety. This is the type of situation that we have seen in other countries, and I think we have to start preparing Barbados for the unfortunate circumstances if we ever found in that to be in that circumstance.
Okay, if I could go to Mr. Alleyne quickly before we go to the break, how do I go about making a claim after that hurricane, which Brian has told me is going to be at, I don't know, over 300 miles per hour, up to five, a category five? How do I go about making that claim if I am impacted severely?
Well, if it is a significant storm, as Brian has talked about category 5, there will be widespread devastation. What most insurance companies will do is collect information and then send out adjusters into a field because it will be very difficult for claimants to get hold of the insurance company. So insurance companies will typically get hold of their clients.
Okay. Brian, are you inundated by these insurance companies to find out when the all clear will be so they can send their adjusters?
What I could say is that we've had on more than one occasion have requests from insurance companies in connection with the passage of the storm or the hurricane.
Okay, so they are ensuring that they check with the officials. Well, the People's Business is going to be back in a bit, and you, the viewers, can call us tonight at 228-5562. Yes, 228-5562. You can field your calls there to Mr. Graham, Mr. Alleyne, or Mr. Murray from the Barbados Met Services. People's Business will be back after the break. And we're back. We're talking about the risk and resilience in this 2024 hurricane season with me, Randy Graham, David Alleyne, and Brian Murray. Now, before we went off, gentlemen, we were talking about having the assessors come out. And when within the national system, assessors look at houses at different levels from category 1 to 5 damage, etc. I want for both Randy and David to take us through what the assessment is like if my home happens to be damaged. You know, how soon should I expect the agent to come and start carrying it out? How long does he or she take? Do I have to be there with them on the spot to give them all the details, or can another family member do it? You know, exactly how does it go?
Randy.
Yeah, sure. Wendy, I can start. So even before the hurricane hits, right? What you will find is insurance companies will put out in the media their contact details in emergency. So clients will see you call this number for so and so, or you can call this other number to make a claim, and they will tell you who their emergency contacts would be. So if your house is damaged, you will try to contact that person. Now, obviously, as I said before, it's mass damage, so it's very difficult. We may not have electricity, we may not have phones, the cell service may not be down. So the insurance companies within their backend will have a list of their clients. They will have a list of the client addresses, and they will send people out to the properties to investigate the properties to see if there was damage and to see what the clients may need. So in some instances, if your clients can contact you, they will, and if they won't, the insurance company will use the list of clients and they will send persons out to assess the damage. Once that initial assessment is done, the insurance companies will have a sense of what you need and what your claim may be. And they will start putting things in place to value the damage and get you a check as fast as you can so that you can start your repairs. This process could be anywhere from days to a week or two in initial stages. In a hurricane, we try to get persons the funds as fast as possible, so it will be no longer than a few weeks before persons get initial payment so they can start their repairs.
Okay, so that sounds very seamless from the looks of it. But now, what I want to ask you quickly, Mr. Alleyne, in terms of these assessments, have you all ever come across cases of any fraud on the part of any homeowner in terms of trying to maybe perhaps get a little more than what damage was already done? So say, for example, the damage was just to the veranda and the windows along the front, right, from the storm. But because the person wanted to change out, say, the kitchen or the bath area, um, some sort of damage is deliberately done to that. I'm not saying they are, I'm asking here, deliberately done to that. How can the assessor determine what was caused by the storm versus what may have been done by individuals trying to ensure that they get a greater fix up than what's officially to be on the books?
Randy, you're asking a hard question. Um, it would be very difficult for an adjuster to know the difference between deliberate damage and damage done by the storm. But the adjuster is trained to look for signs of such damage. Um, there are various examples of what a house would go through, this strain that the house is under relative to wind, and people would know. What is necessary though is for the homeowner to work with the adjuster to come up with an amount that is fair to both the insurance company and to the person claiming.
Okay.
And generally, we have found that consensus is reached.
Okay. I want to bring you back in here, Brian, since Mr. Alleyne spoke about winds and the strength of such. Um, you told us how many, etc. We have been seeing a lot of heat. We've also seen Dallas experience some issues ahead of the official start to the season. Can we expect pockets of disaster outside of the named storms?
I would say yes. Uh, in June 2021 was a very classic example concerning the freak storm. that freak storm was associated with the tail end of a tropical wave. No depression, no hurricane whatsoever. That was a feature by itself associated with a tropical wave, and everyone will have noticed the amount of damage that it had done. The thing about it is that most of the damage occurred in the central parishes, where the southern parishes had rainfall. So yes, we can have that sort of damages outside tropical storms and hurricanes.
Okay, we have a caller on the line. Good evening to you.
Good evening. I heard the gentleman
Could you
saying
speak up for me,
that you
sir?
have to insure your house for the rebuilding part. That's right. Because I also expect you to insure a house for what its value at that time. So why is it changing?
Okay, the caller is saying that what Mr. Graham would have said about rebuilding the costs at its current rebuilding costs seems strange to him because he's always been told to repair it at its value.
Right. So, I understand what the caller is asking. Best to explain this in an example. So, if your house, your cost you $200,000 to build. I'll go back to the example again, and you insure it for that 200,000 that cost. So you've done what you were instructed to do at first, which was to insure that cost. However, time has passed. Inflation has carried up the cost of construction. It now costs you double that to repair the house. So if your house is insured for 200 and you make a claim and the insurance company pays you even if they told you to pay you the full value of the policy, you will still get a check for 200,000. But your contractor is now going to say you need $400,000 to repair the house. In the short, you have a shortfall. So that's why we are encouraging persons to insure for the rebuilt value, so that when you make a claim and you are paid, you don't have a shortfall when you repair your house after the hurricane.
Okay, we have another caller. Good evening to you. Okay, that caller has gone. No, in terms of when the rebuilding is being done, especially if no part of the house is livable, um, would you all cover my rent as the insurance company, Mr. Ali?
Yes, many policies cover rent. There are two forms of rent. One where you rent your home out, and therefore, in the event that the home is destroyed or damaged, you're not receiving funds. That's possible to insure. And then the ability to rent somewhere else, that can also be covered. So the answer to the question is yes.
Okay, we have another caller. Good evening. Good evening and welcome to the People's Business. Go right ahead with your question.
Yes, I agree. How are you doing?
I'm okay. Just speak loudly for me and go right ahead with the question.
Okay, yes, no problem, Wendy. Thank the production team for taking my call. I have three questions for the panel, please. The first question is from Randy Graham of the President of the General Insurance Association. Thanks very much for being on the panel tonight, sir. Good night to you. Now, we know that washing hands is good insurance for against the common cold. What is good insurance for property and person in terms of such as what was Ms. Burke was just asking about a freak storm, something that happens outside of the regular hurricane season. Obviously, we will get the great storms and so on happening intermittently, but what about the actual outside of the freak storm? What would be good insurance for that in terms of what we can use for you? The second question that I have for David Alleyne is a similar question. Mr. Alleyne, good night. What about if I work in insurance and I want to get a job in insurance? Would that help me in any way as you are a member in terms of the aspect of insuring my property or my home better than if it was a regular person just trying to get services from yourself or services from an insurance company? Would that help in any way, and how would it help, and why would it help? My fellow question has to deal with the person there with
Mr.
the
Murray.
weather, yes. Good night to you, sir. My question for the weather has to deal with climate resilience and climate change. You said that La Nina is the main cause of the hurricanes coming at this time because La Nina is present in the atmosphere, which is the climatization of coolness, as opposed to El Nino, which is the climatization of heat. In terms of this phenomena happening and it changing, what are your forecasts and prospects for the weather conditions coming in from this year to next year as it relates to insurance and home ownership for somebody like me looking to get a home in Barbados, the perfect Beijing home as it relates to the weather, because you will know that if next year it's going to be worse, and if the climate is, in terms of the heat, is going to be worse, I would want to get a house that is better insulated or what's not, rather than getting a house that may be big and bulky.
Okay. Now, gentlemen, unfortunately, all three of those questions are going to have to be answered after the break. Just keep them in your memory. I think I've kept them in mind. The People's Business will be right back. Yes, so that caller before had lots of questions for all of us, and we're going to get straight into the answers. Mr. Graham?
Yeah, thanks, Wendy. Well, I much rather answer that might be one post to me than the one post to David. So I'm happy to start up on the policy. So, well, first of all, you must have a policy. We're not pushing insurance on anyone, but we're saying that if your house is damaged, you either take your money from savings and repair it. You can go to the bank and get a loan and repair it, or you can have an insurance policy. No, by our estimate, there are about 50% sorry, of the houses in Barbados or properties in Barbados right now are not carrying insurance in total, or they're underinsured. So we already start behind the ball there, where we're not having all of the property covered by insurance. But having said that, it's much better than it was in the past, right? We are seeing improvements.
Okay.
So if you want to cover your property against hurricane or otherwise, a comprehensive homeowners policy is the best thing to have. It will cover against fire. It will cover against flood. It does cover against damage to your house, even if it's not a named storm. If you have a peril that is covered under the policy, you can be covered outside of a hurricane. So in the caller's question, I would say you first must have a policy, and if you have a comprehensive homeowners policy, you put yourself in the best possible position to be repaired after damage.
Okay, now over to you, Mr. Alleyne. He wants to know if there are any pluses of being in the insurance sector in terms of the cost of that insurance to your home.
Any staff member of any company, I would imagine, would get a little bit of discount on services or goods that are produced. So that would be my answer.
Okay, so he's going to keep it very short and to the point. And over to you now, Mr. Murray, in terms of the whole climate change issues and the El Nino effect, etc., that's happening now.
I would say here that you expect the heat to continue for a while, and obviously the temperatures are getting warmer and warmer as the years go on. It is going to be a very slight increase. But what we have noticed over the past few years is that they have an increase in the maximum and minimum temperatures. So homeowners will have to consider now to look at the design of their house and find ways to improve the ventilation, because obviously it is known that if you get a southeasterly wind after the passage of a tropical wave, you tend to get a lot of warm air coming from the equator. Well, on the other hand, during the winter season, we tend to get the winds from the northeast, and the tend to be a little cooler. So
Oh,
the design of the house is also important. And for those who want to check on the heat, they can check our website, barbadosweather.org, and we have a climate outlook newsletter where we do a heat forecast every month.
okay. Now we're speaking to the month. This is June. We are in cricket. ICC T20 is taking place. Are we likely within this month to have any climatic issues which will adversely impact on that cricket?
I have mentioned about a week ago that we are in a situation where we have the tropical waves coming off the African coast, and they usually low latitude. However, you may get one that will probably come up a little more to the north, and that happened last week where one of the matches was unfortunately washed out. But the reality is that usually around this time of the year, we get a lot of rain associated with these passage of the tropical waves. And at the same time, depending on their strength, they tend to drag the intertropical convergence zone to the north, and which will also affect the matches probably in Guyana and Trinidad and Tobago.
Okay, I don't think that that's good news for either Mr. Graham or Mr. Alleyne, who are both cricketing enthusiasts. We're going to go to a call now on the line. Good evening to you.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
Hi, I'm calling to make a query. Um, I am currently residing in a
Okay, could you
house.
speak just a bit louder for me?
Okay, I am currently living in a house that my mother would have passed and willed to three of her children. But um, I'm having difficulty getting insurance on the property because one of my siblings would have passed and the other sibling is still alive. But when I query to get the insurance, they're saying that everyone would have to be on board.
Okay, what she's saying is that the house has been left to all three of them. Tried to get the insurance, but they're now telling her that everybody has to be on board for that home to be insured. If she's the one living in the property, is there any way to get around it, Graham or Mr. Allen?
Well, I don't know the
Randy?
individual circumstances of that one, but just to say that, with the legal issues behind her, if they were behind her through the will, there are ways to have the policy reflect who have insurable interests or who has an interest in the property. And what she may have to consider with her insurance company is whether the policy could be in the estate of those who have passed, as well as those who have he has been willed to. So you get a situation where it is in the estate of those who has passed and or those who are with us still, and the will has properly given them insurable interest in.
And how then, if that said house did receive damage, who would have to be the person going forward to make the claim?
Well, again, it
Well,
depends on how the policy is set up. Sorry, David. Sorry, David. You go. You
no,
go. You
that's
go.
all. No, no,
Okay.
Randy,
So I
go
would
ahead.
say that
Oh,
it depends on how the policy is set up. But if it is an and or, it means that any named persons on that policy can make advances to the insurance company, and we could attempt to settle the claim on that basis.
Okay. Sounds like might be a little ticklish depending on whether or not the person wants to rebuild that home or take the monies and build their own. Um, okay, now let's talk about whether or not there's a deductible associated with the house insurance. And if there is, how much is it usually in terms of what's being covered? What percentile is it usually?
Well, on all property insurance in Barbados, there's a 2% deductible that applies when there's a claim. Now, this is 2% of the sum insured, and it applies and is deducted before the insurance company will settle the remainder. This can compound the effect to a homeowner, especially where there's underinsurance as well. So policyholders must be aware of this 2%, and furthermore make sure that they're insured for an amount which represents replacement costs. If not, you will have a double whammy effect.
Yeah, I can see how that is going to end up happening in terms of how and who and what we're insured against. Now, generally in Barbados, what has been the norm for you all in terms of the number of houses insured? Do we have a 40% of property on island, a 60, a 80? What's it like in terms of the general coverage?
All right. So, Wendy, first of all, let me say that this is based on our estimates, right? And I put a plug here for the Barbados Statistical Service, just to say that it's questions like these that bring to light why it's so important to do a census and for Barbadians to participate in the census, because we need the data on households to make these type of responses. So based on what we see from the Financial Services Commission, there are about 60,000 policies that cover property in Barbados. The most recent census that we saw from the Barbados Statistical Service, at least the one that's published on their website, I think is a 2020 census, shows about 75,000 properties in the country. If you add the commercial properties to that, in total, we could be anywhere between 110 and 120,000 houses, sorry. So by our estimate, we think there's about 50% of the property covered by insurance.
Okay, that's
And
not
this is up from 20 or 25 years before.
okay. That's not as healthy as we would want it to be, however, because then it means the rest of those people will have to be relying on the state agencies for the assistance. Good evening to you. We have a caller on the line.
Good evening, Wendy, to you and your guest. My question tonight is to an insurance representative. Over the years, you would have paid your insurance premium.
You're getting a bit of echo there. Can you go again?
Right. You're paying, for example, your premium on an annual basis about plus years. You have not received any because of that, etc. Is it possible that person have a base or account similar to what the car insurance we get, etc.?
Okay, so let me just be sure I have you. You're asking if you've never been damaged by a storm, a hurricane, freak, or otherwise, if there's a possibility of you getting a rebate on your
Right.
policy payment amount if you go through the storms and have no damage. That's
Yes.
essentially
Right.
what you're asking?
Yes, but you never had
You've never ever had a claim.
but yet
Okay.
your premium is at the same amount on an annual basis. Is there
Okay.
a possibility that the insurer can receive something rebate or percentage as it relates for annual premiums?
Okay, Mr. Alleyne, is that possible, feasible, doable in any way?
General insurance, which covers property, which we're talking about, is an annual renewable policy. It means that you pay a premium to cover risks of something happening during that year. That premium, there's also a significant component where we have to reinsure, and the premium that we pay goes to help us to be able to handle all of the liability that we take on. That premium goes to reinsurers. A portion stays with us to keep for our net account. There is no carryover to another year. It's a premium which relates to 1 year, and if the risk of something happening has expired, then the premium is due again the next year.
Okay, so I guess the answer long and short is no, it's not
It's
going
very,
But
down.
but
it,
Wendy,
Yes, tell me, Mr. Graham.
it's an excellent question. It's something that we in the insurance sector have to deal with every day. Every day, people are always asking, saying that we have not made a claim. Is there a way for us to get back? And we understand it. The way insurance is set up, it is when it will happen. It will eventually happen. So you have your house, and your insurance is some insured at 100,000, and you pay $1,000 a year. Even if you wait 10 years, and you pay $10,000 in premium over those 10 years, should there be a hurricane and your house is damaged, you will get a check for 100,000. So you would have paid 10,000 in premium, and you get a check for 100,000. That is how the premiums are set up. We know people don't necessarily like the manner in which they have to pay, and if they don't claim, they don't get it back. But it is set up to be affordable and to make sure that when something does happen, you get the full amount of your payment, and you can rebuild and move on.
I'm glad that we are at the point talking about payment. Should you perchance happen to miss the middle of this month when you're due, the 15th, and calamity should strike on the 20th, is there anything there for me?
I don't think that insurance companies will cancel policies, particularly on property insurance, immediately as they become due. There are credit plans which have to be complied with, but in the event that one premium is missed, especially if you've been a client with the company for several years, I don't think that that will impact. It would make a difference if several months had passed and that premium had not been paid, but not over a short period of a week or two.
Okay. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll look at some more issues impacting insurance and property and what homeowners need to be doing. We'll also find out from Brian what more we should be doing in terms of helping ourselves to create a level of resilience should the hurricane come. And we're back on the People's Business. We're discussing the 2024 hurricane season, its risk and its resilience with Mr. Randy Graham, David Alleyne, and Brian Murray of the Met Services. Now, let's look at what properties may not meet the insurance company's criteria should I need insurance. I have a two-bedroom dwelling, but there's some slight dilapidation, say maybe to my veranda section or maybe to the kitchen section. Do I have to undergo repairs to these areas before I can seek out the insurance company covering me?
I think that each insurance company would have its own assessment processes and criteria. Generally, a home should be in good condition to be insured. An insurance company is not going to take on a risk of covering a property which is dilapidated or which may fall apart if wind comes. I think that over the last couple of years, we have seen destruction, damage to properties, which should not have occurred with the level of system that passed us. And we're talking about insurance, but it is incumbent upon our people to understand that they have to protect themselves, make sure that the house can at least stand a category 2 or 3 storm. Given that insurance is one side, the government cannot cover everybody. Randy mentioned the proportion of houses that are insured, which means that the remainder are not insured. We have to prepare ourselves properly so that when something happens, we as a country can rebound.
Okay. Interesting to note. No, in terms of the said scenario that was mentioned before with the property not necessarily being in a singular person's name. What now, in the other instance, I have a house which is in my name, but I have some apartments built on which belong to my children. Do I get insurance separately for the main house and they get for the apartments, or because the walls are connected and it's all seen as one structure, it all has to be insured together?
Randy?
Yeah, so it depends on the ownership structure again. So you say that it may belong to the children, but is that it depends. If you're giving it to the children, but the ownership remains with you. So what's on land tax and what's on the records reflective you as owner, then the policy should be in your name because you're the ones that have the insurable interest in it. You can have attachments onto the property. That could all be covered under one policy. But the issue of the name, or whether it goes in one person's name or it goes in another person's name, gets down to whether the person has an interest, an ownership interest in the property. If you have an ownership interest in the property, then you can go on the insurance policy. If you don't have an ownership interest in the policy, then your name can't go on the policy or shouldn't go on the policy.
Okay, we have a caller on the line. Good evening to you. Okay, it seems as though our caller has gone. Now, we only have 4 minutes to go, so we're going to do some final words and some thoughts with us in terms of this season and ensuring that we can withstand the risk and be resilient. What would be your take home point for our viewers, Mr. Murray?
First of all, I want to say that even though that there's no activity right now in the Atlantic or the Caribbean, we cannot be complacent. Every individual, business, and organization should have their plans in place because all it takes is one hurricane or storm to do damage. And the thing about it is that you do not even have to be directly affected by the center of the storm, such as in the case of Tropical Storm Philippe and Hurricane Tammy last year. Because even those systems being a bit off the shore, it may be put in a situation where we probably figure now that it's not going to affect us. But a storm is just more than the center, and they have these feeder bands, and those feeder bands can cause as much damage at the center of the storm itself.
Okay, over to you now, Mr. Alleyne.
The topic is risk and resilience. And so, our viewers, everybody in Barbados, make sure that you retrofit your home fastenings for your roof, shutters, protect your glass, make sure that you protect the envelope of the house so that you can withstand some manner of impact.
Okay, and finally to you, Mr. Graham.
Well, what I would like to say is that this is very encouraging to see people in Barbados taking the hurricane season seriously. That is very important. One of the worst feelings is to see your house damaged, you cannot protect your family, and you're not sure how you're going to repair or rebuild this house following a hurricane. What we are doing is making sure that people in Barbados are mitigating before the hurricane, they're protecting their family during the hurricane, and importantly, we know how we are going to repair our house after the hurricane. That is how we will survive as a community. That is how we rebuild as a country following a hurricane. And we have to keep the conversation at the forefront.
Okay, I want to thank all three gentlemen for joining me this evening. Mr. Brian Murray, the Deputy Director of the Barbados Meteorological Services, Mr. David Alleyne of the General Insurance Association of Barbados, and Mr. Randy Graham, who's the President of that association. We've been discussing the 2024 hurricane season, risk and resilience. You've all heard from the experts. You understand what the season is likely to look like, so ensure that your home is protected. This has been The People's Business. I'm Wendy Burke. It was a pleasure being with you tonight.